So now let's move to the next problem statement and see what the problem statement is. It is trying to say that filter elements from the array. It means that array might have the multiple elements and I would like to go and filter it. And for this I have a filter function already which takes array as an input and then a function to do the filtering. Fair enough. It is saying that given an integer array ARR and a filtering function fn, there is an array which has some elements and there is a filtering function fn is there which has to be applied. Return a filtered array as a output to it. Now what is this filter function fn? Fn takes two arguments, the value, that is the element at the ith index, and the index itself. Now this filtered array should only contain those elements which got filtered out, for which the result turned out to be true. A truthy value is a value where boolean returns true. Very nice. Please solve it without the built-in array.filter function. So array already has a filter function. I don't have to use. I have to go and create my own custom filter function. Let's try to understand with the help of an example. So for example, here in this case, if you see here, if I scroll my screen up, so it says that if let's say that this is my input array which has the element 0, 10, 20, 30, right, and then I go and apply a function fn which is greater than 10. So all the numbers which is greater than 10 should be considered as a truthy value, truthy condition, and those should be filtered out. So when I go and see here, 0 is greater than 10, no, 10 is greater than 10, no, 20 is yes, 30 is yes. So my final output is 20, 30. Similarly, if I take another example expression here, I have an array 1, 2, 3, then I have a function first index, and I have to go and find if I value is equals to 0, then I should go and return the value at the first index itself, right? So what happens when I come here, its index is equals to 0, its index is equals to 1, its index is equals to 2. So out of all of these things, our answer will be 1 itself. Fair? So this is my input. So for that I have to go and write the logic. So what I need to do here, if I have to do here, I'll have to do things. First of all, I'll have to iterate over array. Once I do this, the next step that I need to do is that I will filter out elements, and then this return inside the array, put it inside the array and then return it. Fair. So let's try to go and write the code for this. So what I go and do here is I go and call it as let item equals to empty array, and then array dot for each, and this takes a function, right? And what will that function take? For each value val index, and what I do is I do array dot for each val index, and what I do now is that I do and check for the condition. I go and say that if fn, and I go and pass val comma index, if this holds true, in that case I go and say that items dot push, and I go and pass val, right, and then what I go and do is that I should go and return items. Let's try to run this and see if it works. So all my test cases has passed. Let me go and submit this and see if it passes on all the test case scenarios. So I've been able to successfully submit my code. Fair enough. Now let's try to move and see the next question. It says that array reduce transformation. Again, it's very much similar to the inbuilt array methods like reduce. I don't have to use it, but it's a quick reminder for you that if you haven't forgot how to make use of the reduce function, go and see that. Now here, through this function, we're gonna implement my own reduce transformations. It is array reduce transformation. Fair enough. It said that given an integer array nums and a reducer function fn, okay, and an initial value in it, return the final result obtained by executing the function on each element of the array sequentially, passing in the return value from the calculation on the preceding elements. So there's a reduce function that I want to go and define, which have the nums, which is a list or an array of the numbers. There is an initial value called as init. This is initial value, and there is a reducer function. This fn is my reducer function. This is a reducer function that I have. The result is achieved by the following operations. First, you go and apply the value, then you apply the next operation, then you go and apply the next operation until every element in the array has been processed. The ultimate value is then returned. Okay. If the length of the array is 0, the function should return init. Okay. Please solve it without using the built-in array.reduce method. Let's try to understand this problem with the help of a example, right? So what happens, for example, here if you see, let's say that this is my array which is given. This is my array which is given 1, 2, 3, 4. The function is sum, accumulated sum, and the value of the current value should return the accumulated plus current. Init value is equals to 0, output is equals to 10. How the output is equals to 10? Let's try to see that. So in the very beginning, I have the init value as 0. So I add 1 plus 0. This value becomes equals to 1. Then what I have to do? I have to add this 1 plus second value, which is 2, which is equals to 3. Then I have to take 3 and I have to take another value, which is equals to 3 again, which is equals to 6. Then I have to take 6 and then I have to take the last value, which is present equals to 4, and this turns out to be 10. Like this is the logic that I have to use to reduce them together. Fair. So now what I have to do? I have to go and implement this code. What I'll do in this code? What I'll do in this code is, typically I'll make use of this function to reduce the nums array, right? Let's try to write the code for this. So I go and call it as I come here, let result equals to init function, and then I go and say that nums dot length and nums dot for each and I go and call it as result equals to, and I go and say that fn, and I go and pass as result comma, and I go and pass the num, right? Why I have done this? If you try to see here, in the case if the num length is equals to 0, which would be a falsy value, in that case I simply go and return the init. This was one of the problem statement that was given, so that's why I have given this statement. So in the case if I have an empty list, empty array which is nums, in that case I should go and directly return the init value which the question was telling me. And then what I should do is that I should go and try to return this result finally. So I go and set that return result. Fair enough. So what I did, I had this function, I defined this result initial values in it. I go and check if it is not 0, and then I'll go and iterate through this array nums, and for each of the num what I go and do is that I go and pass this value to result comma num, and then I get the result, and finally I go and return the result. Just try to run and see if it works. Yes, it is working all fine. Let's try to submit and see if my solution is being accepted. Awesome. So this has been accepted successfully. Let's try to move on and try to solve the next problem. Now let's try to move to the next question. This question is saying function composition. It is trying to remind you to the concept of how the composition of the functions happens in the world of JavaScript, right? So I have this question related to the function composition, and it says that given an array of the functions, which is f1, f2, f3 and f1, return a new function fn that is the function composition of the arrays of the function. Let's try to understand that what it means. It means that if you see here compose, this is a function. This is basically an array of functions. And what we need to do is that inside this, right, inside this, I have to write the logic, write logic to compose them, compose the functions. And how I do it? It says that, for example, let's say that if this is the function which is the array of the function which is passed, then what you need to do is that the final fnx should be equals to h of x. It's composed inside h is composed inside g. This is composed inside the f. In the case if this function's array is empty, right, in that case the final value should be fx should be equals to x. Let's try to understand this with the help of an example. Okay, so if you can see here, if I scroll down, I have these functions, and this is x, this is another function, this is the third function, right? This is function 1, this is function 2, and this is a function 3. We have to assume that it always expects one value, this function as an input, and it only returns one value as an output, right? So I have this function 1, I have this function 2, I have this function 3. They expect one value as an input and one value as an output, right? And initial value is x equals to 4. So first of all, what we do, we go and provide the value of 4 to this. So this becomes this value gives me 5. Now I have the value of x, then it becomes multiplied. So 5 into 5, this returns 25. And then finally 25 into 2, this returns equals to. I think I did some mistake. Let's try to redo this, right? So if I go and see, it's x equals to 4. Starting value is x equals to 4. Right, and if I have to start doing it from the end, I think, let's see that we have to evaluate from the right to left. Let's check that. So since f is g of hx, so basically it will be left right to the left itself. Yes, that's right. And that's why it's very important to actually read through the example. So if you see here, it says that this has to be evaluated from the right to the left. Right, so first of all, what we do, we first go and apply this. So x value is 4, so this will return me 8. Then I'll go here, so 8 into 8, it will be, this whole thing will return me 64, and then I go and provide this 64 plus 1, so this will return me 65, and this is what the answer which we see here. So example 1 is giving me the value is equal to 65. Same way, if I try to find another example, if I scroll down, then I have this, x is equals to 1. First of all, I'll go and evaluate this. This value will get me the 10 value. And this is 10 into 10, this value will return me 100. And when I give this value will return me 1000. You can see the answer is 1000. So now what I have to do here inside this is that I will have to iterate over functions. And once I have done this, then I'll have to go and compose them. Let's see that how it would be done. So I go and clean this, and let me go and write here. So I go and say as let result equals to x, and then I go and say that for let I equals to functions dot length minus 1, and then I value should be greater than equals to 0, and then I say I minus minus, and then I do that result equals to functions, and I will provide this. And whatever this function is, I go and pass value of x here, which is the result here. So now go and write function I result, and I go and call it as in the bracket, and I go and store that in the form of the result. And then finally, what I go and do is that once everything is done, let me go and close this bracket. I go and return result, right? And that's how it should be. The function gets closed, and this should get let's try to run this and see if this works. If I go and click on this run, So I have this additional bracket which is showing up. Let's try to see that where it has come from. Okay, so I need to go and remove this additional part which is in there. So I'll go and remove this, and now let's try to submit it again. Perfect. So when I run it, that is case 1, case 2, case 3 all have been passed. If I go and click on the submit button, let's try to see if all the solutions are getting solved. Yes, so it has been accepted. If I go back now to my 30 days of JavaScript challenge, I see that I have been able to solve each of them. All of these have been submitted, right? Now let's try to move to the next question, which is the return length of the arguments passed. Now let's try to understand the next question, which says that return length of the argument passed. The question says, write a function argument's length. Okay, so this is a function called as argument length that returns the count of arguments passed to it. As you can see that this function takes the variable number of arguments, variable length of arguments. We also can call it as a varargs, right? Almost all the programming language, including JavaScript, have a support that if you want to go and define a method or a function which can take the variable number of arguments, it's allowed to do it. And how do we do it? We do it with the help of this dotted notation. If you see here, the 3 dot here indicate that this could be like you can pass 1 argument, you can pass 2 argument, you can pass 10 arguments, and you are allowed to do that. So the question is, we have to go and identify that how many arguments have been passed. For example, if I go and pass argument as array 5, the value should return as 1. If you go and pass the arguments as this value, it should go and 3 values, empty object, null, and the 3 should go and return me the count as the 3 itself. Pretty simple question. Let's go ahead and try to solve this question. What we do is that once we are inside the JavaScript, typically normally when it args come inside this, it is considered more of like a list, more of like an sequence of values. So normally the length method which we use with the array should get applied here also. So what I need to go and do is very simple. I'll go and call here return. I'll go and pass return args dot length. So normally arg is considered as an array itself, and the method length should work here. Simple. Now let's try to run this and see if it works. If I go and run this, it's working fine. Let's go and click on the submit button to see if it works on all the input parameters. Perfect. So it has been accepted. Let's try to move to the next question, right? What is the next question? Now allow one function call. Let's try to see this function. So it is saying that given a function fn, okay, return a new function identical to the original function. It should return, except that it ensures fn is called at most once. So if you see here, this is a function fn, and inside this I'm trying to return another function. When I go and call this once, this will be a function, and it has to ensure that fn is called at most once. The first time the return function is called, it should return the same as the fn. Every subsequent time it is called, it should return undefined. So first time when this inner function is called, it should return the output of this function fn, and after that, as many times I go and call it, I should go and return unidentified. For example, let's say that this function fn is this, right? And I have to go and call for this first value, and this is the second value. So when I go and call once for the first time, once fn comes, and when I go and call this once fn, first this function will be called. So 1, 2, 3, the sum of all of that will be 1 plus 2 plus 3 will be how much? 6. So 6 is the return. But second time when it is called, nothing should happen. It should go and return the undefined. Fair enough. This looks cool. Let's try to see with the help of one more example which they have provided. Let's assume that the function is this. Let's assume that function is this. So it takes 3 arguments, a, b and c, and then it multiplies all 3 arguments and returns the value. And then I have to go and call for the input 1, this is the input 2, and this is the input 3. For 3 inputs, I have to go and make a call of. So what I go and do, I go and call these functions. This gets and returns me a function. When I go and call it first time, this should be called, so it should get multiplied. 5 7 is 35 into 4, 140. This works perfectly fine. Second time it is called, it should not return anything because they are undefined. Third time it should not return, so it's undefined. So I have to go and define this function, right? Looks pretty simple. You can pause the video and give it a try and write your own code. It's very simple and straight. It's just a basic revision of all your JavaScript concept, right? So what I'm going to do is that first of all, we're going to create a flag. Let me go and call it as let this function is called is equals to false. In the beginning, the inner function will not be called for the first time, so I'm going to say that it is false. And if it is not called, I'm going to say that if called is false, in that case, I should go and return fn, and I go and pass all these arguments here. Else, I should go and return undefined. Fair enough. Right, what did I did here? I first of all put up a flag call as called, and in the beginning I go and set it as the false. If this flag is still false, then I go and return this function, the first function. The one thing which I missed is that I set the value called as false. So if it is false, it will go inside this, and if it comes inside, I have to go and set the value as equals to true. Perfect. Now the code works all fine. Let's try to go and run this and see if it works. Yes, both the test cases are accepted. Let's try to submit and see if the code is submitted as such. Yes, the code got submitted. Now let's try to move to the next problem statement. Let's quickly move to the next one. The next problem says that memorize. It means that something has to do with the memory optimization, right? Using it. Given a function fn, okay, let me open my scribble. Given a function fn, return a memoized version of that function. If you're not very sure, pause the video here, go and check in the English dictionary what's the meaning of memoization. If you come from the data structures background, you'll hear a algorithm style or a coding style called as dynamic programming, which works again on the memoization, right? A memoized function is a function that will never be called twice with the same inputs. Instead, will return a cached value. This is the advantage, saying that if a function is memoized and in it, if you go and keep on passing the same input again and again, the function should not be executed fully. It should go and return the cached data. You can assume there are three possible input functions: sum, fib, and factorial. Okay, now I can see that this is a memoized function. So this is a function that you go and pass into this, and this should return the memoized version of function. This should return the memoized version of this function. There are three types of function which could be passed. The fn has three possibilities. It could be a sum, it could be Fibonacci, it could be factorial. Sum accept two integers a and b and return a plus b. Assume that if a value has already been cached for the argument ba, where a is not equals to b, it cannot be used for the arguments ab. Okay, so it's trying to say that if the two arguments, so first function is typically the first function is sum, which takes arguments 2b, and the order ab and ba, these two are different. So once if I go and pass for the argument 3 and 2, the next time if I go and call pass the 2 and 3, it should be considering as a separate call. Similarly, Fibonacci accepts a single integer n, and this returns 1 if n value is less than or equals to 1, and it is always the following the standard Fibonacci series. The element at any index will be the sum of the previous two index elements. Perfect. And factorial accept a single integer n, returns 1 if n value is less than or equals to 1, otherwise it will keep on multiplying the numbers from that 1 to that given digit. Let's try to understand with the help of the example which they have provided. Let's try to move on further. So for example, function name is sum. What are the function that I have to go and call, get call count. Values are this, output is this. Let's try to understand with the help of the explanation they have given. Let's say that sum is sum. The sum has to be implemented like this, okay, to the sum of the two numbers. Then I go and call this function called a memorize sum. When I go and call this memorize sum, it will get the memorize sum value. Memorize sum to 2 calls return 4. Sum was called as 2. Then again, if I go and call memorize sum 2 returns 4, however, sum was not called because the same input were seen before. Memorize 1 2 again returns 3. Sum was called as 1 2 was not seen before. Now if I go and call the get call count, it should go and return me the count 2. Now we have called it thrice, it will get me a call count only equals to 2 itself. Perfect, very nice. Let's try to move on, try to see the another example. Example say that it has to be a factorial function. Okay. How many times it is called? It is called, then get call count, call. So when you go and call for the 2, it should go and return me the value as 2. When I go and call it for the 3, it will go and call me the value call as 6. When I go and call the value for the 2 again, it will get me the value as equals to 2. But the get call count so far should be 1 and 1. It should get me 2 only. Then again I go and call for the 2, it should go and return me the value 2. Right. For with the 3, it should get me the value as 6. And with this get call count, I should go and return the values 2 itself. Fair enough. So this is what it is returning, 2 6 2 2 6 2. Fair enough. Now since we have understood the problem, let's try to go and implement this function called as a memorize. So inside this memorize function, let's first of all go and create a cache. So let me go and create a cache here. Let me go and call it as const cache equals to an object, and this return function args const keys equals to args. Then I go and write if key in cache return cache key. If equals to output, and then I go to return output. Let's try to see what we have done here, right? So first of all, inside this memorize function, we defined a cache where we go and store the data. Then I go and define this function structure is already there, right? So first of all, let me go and read the R's. Then I go and say that if this key is present in the cache, then I go and return the value from the cache itself. If not, then I should go and call this function. I should go and store it back, store in the cache. And then I should go and return the output. Let's try to run this and see if this works. So let me go and put this as run. There's one extra dot. This has to be one additional dot here. If I go and run this, works fine. If I go and click on this submit, let's try to see that if it works. Submit work. And this question is again submitted successfully.